And welcome back to Career Studies. Today we're going to go over Standard 13.2.8a, which has to do with applying effective speaking and listening skills, which would be really important if I was using effective speaking skills for this point. And the lesson objective today, we're going to watch an effective role-playing scenario featuring a good and bad, and when I say bad, I mean really bad interview, and we're going to talk about effective interviewing techniques. So as we get started, let's talk about what a mock interview is. And a mock interview is a practice interview designed to simulate a real job interview. We know what types of questions you're probably going to be asked at an interview. So we can practice those questions. In fact, it would be foolish not to practice them before you go to your first job interview, or even if you've gone to interviews before, it'd be foolish not to practice. Mock interviews are one of the best ways to improve your interview skills and to prepare for an interview. And a critical part of the process is to get feedback. So the interviews that you're going to watch are students. They are not actors. They are students going through an interview process and they are just practicing. And then after, you will hear them getting some feedback from their teacher. So what should you expect if you were going to a mock interview or if you were having an interview as a high school student? Well, the first thing is you would obviously meet the person who is interviewing you. And you should greet them with a firm handshake and obviously make eye contact with them and address them as Mr. or Mrs. or Ms. So the person can invite you to come back to their office or to some sort of table or desk, and it's most polite to either wait for them to sit down or to wait for them to ask you to sit down. So they're going to say something like have a seat or go ahead and have a seat or something to that nature. So then you're going to have a seat. Your body language is important. And I just have a quick picture here to remind you. So we have the same woman sitting 4 different ways, and it is just so blatantly obvious that on the picture to the far right, she is sitting there and she is interested. So you want to, have your feet, facing forward, sitting up straight, leaning slightly forward, looking like you were eager, ready to go, interested, wide awake, alert, friendly. Like there's nowhere else in the world that you would rather be than at that interview meeting with that person. And that is the way that you want to present yourself. I've had the opportunity to interview a lot of different people over the years, and I can tell you that when they sit down and they start talking, first impressions are formed, and it is really hard to undo those first impressions. So if somebody comes in and in the beginning, even if they're nervous and in the beginning, if they present themselves in a way that seems like they're not interested, it is really hard for me to make another impression and for me to start to think like, oh, maybe they might be good for this job, if in the beginning they seem distracted or like they didn't want to be there. So just ideally practice. I mean, walking in, sitting down, and just being ready to go, and not over the top enthusiastic. I mean, we don't want to scare anybody, but like you want to be there, you're happy to be there, and they have your total and undivided attention. 9 times out of 10, the first question, so tell me something about yourself. You know that is probably how they're going to start it. So you can prepare for that. And we're going to talk about how to answer that question, but knowing already what that first question is going to be gives you the opportunity to start preparing for it. So just to know already what to expect sets you up in a good position because you can be prepared for this. So what we're going to do now, you're going to watch a short clip and it has 2 high school students doing a mock interview. Pay attention to how they do. I am sure the first one, they on purpose are doing, making a point of not doing a good job. The second one, I'm sure there's things that she could do better, but let's not be too harsh because this is her first time and I'm sure she's nervous. And the reason I picked this one is because I think it's realistic. I didn't want to have an actor doing a polished, great job. I think it's realistic that she answered some questions, especially because she didn't have experience and she answered how I think a realistic high school student might answer that question. So watch the interviews, and then we're going to have some discussion on how they did, and how you could answer these questions.